Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Retirement Cafe podcast, which is brought to you by the Timeline app. Timeline app is a state-of-art retirement income planner software that helps financial planners like me bring your retirement journey to life and answer your big retirement income questions. Now, I'm honoured this week to welcome none other than Dame Esther Rantzen to the show. Esther Rantzen really needs no introduction. She has been a household name for many, many years, since first appearing on our TV screens as a presenter and a journalist. Then in 1986, she famously launched Childline, a free, private and confidential service where children can talk about any issues they're dealing with. Childline is now part of the NSPCC, which Esther is a trustee. She's also the patron...
Not anymore.
Not anymore? Oh.
After 32 years, I stopped being on the board, but I'm still president of Childline.
Fantastic.
Right.
She's also the patron for 19 charities and is a damehood for services to children and older people. And more recently, Esther launched the Silver Line. A very warm welcome to the Retirement Cafe podcast, Esther.
Very kind. It's almost as if I was in my own home.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me in, and thank you for the coffee, which is lovely. And it's a beautiful frosty morning here in London, and I feel very welcome. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad.
So tell me a little bit more about why I'm here to chat to you about your passion at the moment of Silverline.
Well, we launched it November the 25th, 2013. And since then, we've had well over 2.5 million calls to our helpline, which is open 24/7.
Wow.
Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, 3 a.m, Sunday afternoon. And it has a very simple and easy number to remember.
Yeah. Because
it's free, it's 0800, and then it goes 4, you think, who's it for? 70, 80, 90.
Brilliant.
So it's 0800 470 80 90. Exactly. Besides the helpline, we have Silverline Friends.
Right.
So if any of your podcast recipients would like to become a Silverline Friend, have a look at our website. It's a half an hour conversation a week, and people can do it from their own home, and it's very easy to do. And it really becomes a real friendship, although you will never meet the person you're talking to. But quite often, it's the only conversation people have throughout the week. So it's very important.
Wow.
And we also do conference calls, we call Silver Circles, and we also try and problem solve for some of our callers, and that's Silver Connects. And we are now part of Age UK, which is very important to us because a new charity can be quite fragile.
Sure.
Childline found it difficult to raise money, and it's even harder to raise money for charities that help older people. There isn't a charity helping older people in the top 10 British charities.
Right.
Or in the top 20, or in the top 30, or in the top 40.
Gosh.
Age UK comes in at 46.
Wow.
And to me, it's a crying shame, because what it proves is that, you know, if you talk to the great British public about starving donkeys or unhappy dogs or cancer charities, things like that, I mean, they're all very important, but older people don't have the same pull on people's emotions.
No.
Anyway, the Silver Line is very important to me. Every Christmas I talk to about 30 of our callers, and it's amazing how alone some people can find themselves, you know, how completely isolated.
So what made you kind of identify, what was the story behind this, the reason you've created this?
Well, when I moved in here, it was the first time that in 71 years I was living on my own, and I didn't enjoy it.
Right.
And I remember saying to my daughter, who's quite religious, I'm agnostic, she's quite religious, so I was a bit shocked to hear myself say to her, you know, Em, I think God wants you to move in with me. And fortunately she laughed, and I did what I always do when I need therapy. I rang the Daily Mail, and they said, good topic, write about it. And I got such a huge response that I was invited to a conference by a group of charities called the Campaign to End Loneliness, and that was when I got my light bulb moment and thought, well, if a helpline helped children who had problems that they didn't know how to solve, maybe this loneliness thing is something that a helpline would help with.
Yeah.
So I asked all the experts who were at the conference, and they all said, do it. So we did it.
So, who calls? Who is the audience?
Who's the audience? Well, the vast majority are over 55,
Right.
living on their own,
Right.
not talking in depth to anyone else, some not talking at all to anyone else. A number of them suffer from disabilities, which mean they are really housebound,
Yeah.
looking at the same four walls day after day. Some of them, I think loneliness is about loss, so it could be loss of a partner, or loss of a job, or loss of sight or hearing or mobility, something that has been the prop of your life, and you lose it, and suddenly you're in a vacuum.
Yeah.
And the pangs of loneliness are very painful and can strike any time of day or night, which is why the Silverline has to be 24/7.
Yeah. So, I mean, a telephone call obviously is wonderful to be able to, and people are coming. Are they coming with problems on the phone? Is it stuff
Mainly
that they
loneliness.
Right.
Mainly. We've got a new interim CEO since we joined Age UK, and he went up to Blackpool, where the helpline is based,
Right.
and listened into some of the calls, and he was really struck by a lady who, when we answered and said, how can we help, she said, well, I just need someone to cheer me up because I'm so sad. And he thought, nobody should be in a situation where they literally have to ring up a helpline because they're so unhappy.
No.
But you don't have to be profoundly unhappy, and you don't have to be completely isolated. You just have to feel that you'd like a conversation.
Right. And tell me more about then the extension of the Silver Connects and the Silver Circles, because I think this is moving it on, isn't it, from just the telephone call, the very valuable telephone call, but.
Well, Silverline Friends are volunteers that we train.
Right.
And I've been very struck by the value and importance of that relationship. It's not a counselling relationship. We don't ask people to have specific training of the kind that Childline needs. It's actually a very equal, friendly, enjoyable conversation that people look forward to. Some people say, I make myself a cup of tea and sit down and look forward to, what we're going to talk about. It has quite a therapeutic effect, however, because some people tell me that because they know they're going to talk to the same person next week, they've got to have something to talk about. So they will do something. It will, if you like, push back the horizons a bit. And if they've always been thinking of going to an exercise class but have never quite got round to it, maybe they'll go, so they've got something to talk about. It's a wonderful story that happened very early on after our launch, when we were just in pilot stage. Someone called John saw me talking about it on television and rang in and spoke to a volunteer called Wilma. And John had been a professional ballroom dancer, and he'd just lost his wife, who had also been his ballroom partner, and they talked together. So it was not just losing a wife, it was losing everything in his world. And Wilma told me that he was really depressed, and so depressed that he didn't go out. He barely had the mojo which enabled him to answer the phone, so she would sometimes have to ring several times before he'd pick it up.
Right.
Anyway, gradually they got to know each other, and she told him that she went to line dancing classes, and he said, you go on your own? And she said, absolutely. And he said, I could never do that. And she said, look, if I can, you can. So he began to go to salsa classes.
Wow.
And after a year, he started holding his Sunday night ballroom dancing classes, and she said he's completely got his mojo back.
I'm sure.
And his voice is quite different, his attitude is different. Now, it may be that would have happened anyway, but I can certainly tell you that the relationship with Wilma gave it that launch pad, gave it that extra boost.
A little bit of inspiration there, yeah.
Absolutely, and a bit of a challenge. If she could do it, he could do it.
Brilliant, brilliant. What do you think about the relationship now with older people and younger people? Do you think there's a... people are very busy. I mean, I think have they always been busy? I'm not sure, but it feels like the world is busy, and maybe sometimes the older people I talk to don't want to be a burden.
I think those are the two B words we hear most, busy and burden.
Right.
Everyone's busy. My son's busy, my daughter's busy, the shop assistants are busy. I don't know that you call them shop assistants anymore. You've probably got to call them retail operatives. The retail operatives are busy, the neighbours are busy. We're all so busy. Why are we so busy? What are we pushing into our lives that's so valuable? And I think that's a problem. I also, although I absolutely understand why retirement villages can be a really excellent way of finding appropriate housing, safe housing, everything on your doorstep so you can get to your doctor, your hairdresser, your whatever.
Yeah.
The best ones, the ones that I really like best, are the ones where the community still comes in. So maybe there's a swimming pool that kids use. Maybe there's a hairdresser that other people come in. Because I do think we need each other, the various generations. I get a lot from my grandsons. I don't know what they get from me, but I certainly get a lot from them. Age 7, 4 and 2.
Yes, there's lots of energy there.
And granddaughters,
Fantastic.
Lots of jokes. So I think it's important that we stay in touch with each other.
Yes. And what about... I see a lot of people moving away. Their kids have moved to different towns, taken on different careers, and they don't maybe get back to see mum and dad or mum or dad, so much any longer. Yeah. And obviously some people maybe not have had children.
Absolutely. I mean, there's all kinds of things happen. Some of our callers tell me that they move to be nearer the family, and then the son or daughter gets a job abroad, and suddenly they're in a community they don't know anymore.
Sure.
People also move when they retire. My in-laws did that. We're really happy. I mean, that was an example where they were quite lonely in London, but they moved down to Worthing in a little retirement enclave, and suddenly everybody was hospitable and helping each other, and so they got a lot out of that. So it can be terrific.
Yes.
But in other cases, I mean, I talked to someone over Christmas who is absolutely isolated. It's really interesting. He had 40 years at sea, and he progressed from being an apprentice to being a captain.
Wow.
And then retired, and suddenly that close community that he'd been working with wasn't around him anymore. And nobody goes to see him. And he's disabled, he's got various ailments, which mean he can't get out. But the Silver Circle we run, we have some for seafarers. Okay. So I've linked him in with that. He's already called the helpline, but he didn't know about the Silver Circle. So
how can people get involved in the Silver Circle?
Right, what they do is, first of all, you ring that number, which you remember.
Right. Yes, the 0800 470 80 90.
Full marks, gold star. They ring that number and they will talk to... keep trying. We have quite a big demand. We don't have quite enough people answering, so do keep trying. If you don't get through the first time, you will get through.
Right.
And then we... you say, I'd love to have a Silver Line friend. I'd love to join one of your circles. Would that be possible? Have a look at the website. All the stuff we do is on it. And we will try and match you with people. You say what your interests are. Some people are ex-service, and so they would like to talk to other ex-service people. As I say, seafarers. We've got a Caribbean group.
Right.
We've got a music group.
Right.
Or we've got general groups where people just talk about Harry and Meghan. That's quite an interesting combination, isn't it? Hagen. I've heard about Mexit.
Absolutely.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? But they've become the topic of the moment. So if you want to talk about the news, you can talk about the news.
So I'm not sure I dare ask this question because I'm not sure it's the right response, the right thing anyway, but what's retirement been like for you? Do you view yourself as retired?
I'm looking forward to it. I think the thing that occupies me most is Childline and the Silver Line.
Yeah.
So you could say that most, I would say 90% of what I do is voluntary work. And I think that's true of a lot of people of my age. We like being needed, so it's really good to have our skills called upon. And that's great. But we do have to earn our living from time to time, as I was discussing with my accountant this morning. It's nice if you can, as I have, find an occupation where they still want you to write or broadcast or whatever. So I'll be making a documentary quite soon, which is interesting, for Channel 5, and there's one or two other things that people ask me to do, and then you find that some topic comes up. I was rung up at 7:30 this morning and asked my views about the Director General of the BBC.
Right.
So the nice thing about being our age is that we don't care what people think. We know what we think. So I wasn't too careful about what I said.
So some of your friends, I suppose, maybe of a similar age, have you looked at them and thought successful retirement or maybe not so successful retirement?
I don't think I know anyone who's retired.
Right.
Because I tend to know people who are in similar trades.
Yeah.
So they're actors, they're still acting, they're journalists, they're still writing. But I do meet retired people when I go on holiday, because quite often I go on Saga cruises, which I absolutely adore. Wonderful company. They do not employ me, though I do admit they have raised money for the Silver Line, but that's not the reason I say they're so good. And they really look after you. And what a jolly bunch of people go on these cruises. But we're talking about the active elderly.
Yeah.
It's okay if you can get out and about, but it's not so much fun if you are on your own, like my ship's captain, and disabled, and therefore the company that you're used to isn't there anymore. And what my daughter says, she's a trained social worker, and she says, for children, there is a network. And although some children we know slip through the gaps and are very vulnerable, with older people there isn't a network. There's no structure.
No.
And I tell you what I find quite odd. My ship's captain has carers who come in night and morning.
Right.
So don't they perceive how lonely he is? And haven't they got volunteers in his community that they could link him in with? I'm wondering whether we're not joined up enough. Because carers come in for 15 minutes and go again.
Yeah.
So why aren't they linked in with people who can fill in the rest of the day for people who are on their own?
And again, it possibly comes down to this busyness of the carer. They're paid to do their 15 minutes and on to the next one before they get paid again, maybe. And
but they should have a checklist. Is my client linked into other organisations? Are they spending? There should be a loneliness checklist. See, I get these rushes of blood to the head. I suddenly think, there's another light bulb. So what do I do about that?
So if you were in a community, I mean, I mentioned before we came on air that that I live in Mudderford, and it is quite a retired community. There's south coast of the UK is, Bournemouth has always been a place to go and retire to. How would you think? Because some people may not be reaching out on the telephone to Silverline. How would you try and identify people? I think in your community that you could possibly, be that opportunity to, knock on the neighbour's door.
Well, big question. Sometimes fire officers do it. I knew one on Merseyside who used to do that. The motive was that elderly, I hate that word, older gentlemen living on their own are a fire risk because They may put a chip pan on, forget, I'm not stereotyping, this is
No.
what the fire officer told
No.
me. They may put the chip pan on, go down the pub and forget that they've left it on, and the place goes up. So he tried to identify people on their own. And what happened was, he said, he literally rings on doorbells in a street, bangs on doors, and says he's there to check the smoke alarm. And while he's checking the smoke alarm, he looks at the way people are living and maybe has a bit of a conversation. He says because of the uniform he wears and because there's a fire engine at the end of the street, people trust him. They know, what he is, who he is. And he told me the story of one elderly, I hate that word, older gentleman who was living on his own in terrible conditions, house cold and damp, should have been rehoused, but never contacted housing or social services because he had a dog and he was petrified that he would be forced to give up his dog, which is another thing I'm cross about. But actually allowed the fire officer to get in touch and got somewhere to live, which was warm and dry and kept the damp out, and where he was allowed to keep his dog.
Right.
So that's a good story, happy ending. But it is, because loneliness is self-fulfilling. People who are lonely think that nobody wants to know them, so they don't go out the door. Very difficult to target. Too much pride to ask for help. Think that everyone's too busy, don't want to be a burden. It's very hard to find them.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe it is as simple as knocking on your neighbour's door
Absolutely.
and saying hello.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. But
I know I have been guilty in the past of living in communities where I haven't, you nod to the person in the next door
Yeah.
flat or house or what have you, but, 2 years later you still don't know their name.
I know one neighbour here. She happened to sell me the flat. She's a lovely lady. I've no idea who lives at the end of the corridor. There's only 3 flats on my corridor. Why
Gosh.
don't I know?
That's-
Why haven't I banged on the door with a cup of sugar? I don't know. We are a peculiar nation, actually. We've got this sort of privacy thing.
We do. Yeah. But I think often if we take that first step, people are grateful, aren't they?
Yeah, and people are fun. She had a party, jolly nice party. If I hadn't known her, I wouldn't have been invited. So, New Year resolution, bang on your neighbour's door.
Bang on your neighbour's door. That sounds like
And even if they're rude to you, put up with it.
Absolutely. And I suppose we're stepping into the shoes at that point of the valuable work that Silverline's doing is actually doing it face to face and saying hello to somebody. What could we do? Is there anything we can help you with?
Well, what I realised very early on is there isn't a silver bullet for loneliness. No one service can solve the problem.
Right.
Loneliness is multifactorial. A phone call is very nice. A volunteer face-to-face is very nice. It's not enough. You need to have a feeling of belonging to someone somewhere. And if you haven't got that feeling, I remember talking to somebody, he's a lovely guy, he's blind and lives not far from you. And he has a lovely daughter who makes sure his home is clean and sorted, but she's very busy. She has a very full-on job. He has a mobility scooter, which he cannot use because he's blind. All he wants is to go into town, have a cup of coffee and a chat.
Yeah.
The neighbours never bang on his door. He was away in hospital. No one banged on his door to see if he was okay now. And after we'd had our conversation, as I was leaving, he took a chocolate out of the basket in front of his mobility scooter, which is what he gives people as a reward for visiting him. Not good.
No.
So simple, isn't it? If you walk with him into his town, find a cafe, like your retirement cafe, have a cup of coffee, tell each other a few jokes, walk with him back.
Yeah.
Nobody does it.
No. No.
And he lives in a little estate of nice houses where you'd think they'd know each other.
Yeah. And we could all take a little bit of action, as we just said, as you said, that you could go down to the flat down the corridor and knock on the door and say hi. And actually, if every one of us did that, we only need to knock on the one next door, don't we?
I know.
And we've got problems solved.
Now, a friend of mine's mother lives in a village in Oxfordshire where they really do look after each other.
Brilliant.
If there's snow, they clear each other's paths without being asked. She bakes scones every day because she knows that there will be people coming in who'd like one. She has a dog. People take her dogs for walks. I mean, it can happen.
Can happen.
So what's the difference between those two stories? What's the chemistry that happens in one and not in the other?
Yeah.
Don't ask me.
No. But it could start with just knocking on the door, I think.
Yeah.
That'll be my resolution as well.
Good. Close friend of mine, have you heard of the Big Lunch?
I haven't, no.
Well, it's something that Tim Smith, who created the Eden Project, he decided that in June, each community should have a big lunch. Everybody brings their own food and they get together as a community on a day.
Love it.
And it's a lovely idea, and my friend did it for 5 years.
Right.
And then stopped. Nobody took it on. Weird.
Yeah.
What she got that nobody else in her neighbourhood seems to have. It's
Right.
not about time. What's it about? Liking people, is it?
Yeah. I suppose, there may be some fear. Will people turn up? Will people join in? So there's always that, isn't there? I mean, I think the isolation thing to me often is there's a fear of, well, I don't know anyone, or I'm not sure about, the guy next door type of thing.
It's confidence. Yes, you do need. Yes, it's tough. It's difficult. On the other hand, the voluntary sector, charities, would fall over without retired people.
Absolutely.
Who knock themselves out, put in the time, put in the effort, put in the energy, keeping them going.
Well, the purpose you've talked about in your, for want of a better word, for the podcast, I'm doing speech marks, but your retired years, you're still living purposeful, aren't you? A purposeful life. There's still things that are driving you on.
Yes.
Still things you feel need to be done.
New challenges. Well, maybe that's the thing, that what you need is to associate yourself with something you think is valuable and important. And for my friend, it was creating the community. For me, it's Childline and the Silver Line and a couple of other charities that need me. Other people, it's a football team maybe, or a skill they want to pass on. Or I love U3A.
Yes.
I think that is totally brilliant. So I think that is a way that people can keep finding new ways of skilling up, in their 80s and 90s. Why not?
And maybe some of the people who are feeling lonely or isolated, maybe the Silver Connects and Silver Circles may be an opportunity for them. So even though they're feeling isolated and lonely themselves, by joining those groups, we'll help other people, and by helping other people, help themselves.
Well, a lot of our volunteers are older people on their own.
I'm sure.
And they really enjoy it. I was talking to one of our callers, Silverline callers, who's an ex-teacher, and her Silverline friend is also an ex-teacher, whom she has persuaded to go back into teaching.
Wow.
So it's mutually beneficial.
Wow.
And certainly, I mean, a lot of our older callers who are on their own would like to talk to someone of the same age with the same memories and the same life experience. So that, really good idea. Others would like to talk to someone younger. It's a matter of taste.
Yeah. So, I really appreciate the time that you've taken to chat to me today. How can listeners find out more about Silverline?
Well, there are two ways. One is to go onto our website, which I can't remember the address of.
All right, we'll put it in the show notes and put links on the website.
Very kind, because actually you've only got to Google it. Ignore aluminium ladders called Silverline and go to Silverline Charity. I think we're top of the list, actually. And you will see all the details there, or you ring us up.
Great.
but I can't remember the number.
It's all right, no problem. We will put it all there. And it's 0800 470 80 90.
Another gold star.
I passed the test today
You
for
said
Dame
that.
Esther Ransom. So, to find out more about the work that Silverline is doing and how you could get involved, as I said, check out the show notes on our website at theretirementcafe.co.uk, where you'll find all the useful links that Esther has mentioned. As always, if you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on iTunes. We've had some really lovely reviews recently.
Supposing they don't.
Leave nice reviews.
If you hated this podcast, my name is Joan Bakewell.
Absolutely. So, yes. So if you've enjoyed the episode, please leave us a review and share it. Let your friends know and get them to listen. To anyone who might be interested that we provide benefit to. To be sure never to miss an episode, hit the subscribe button on your preferred podcast player, or you can listen on the website, theretirementcafe.co.uk, where you can subscribe to the weekly emails that we send you to let you know who we've been chatting to. So thanks again once again to the Timeline app for sponsoring the podcast. I'm very grateful for that. Until next time, this is Justin King helping you feel more informed in your retirement.